Good day everyone. So for today's video, I am going to discuss to you the Turks and Qidans in medieval Central Asia. So, between the 10th and the 14th century of most Turks converted to Islam and some tribes moved westward. So, the introduction says that another movement took a southward direction to India where Sahiruddin Muhammad Babur founded the Mughal Empire. So, Babur's initial intention was to dominate medieval Central Asia, but too many other Turkish leaders had the same idea. So his ancestry seems to have been Turco-Mongol, for he claimed direct descent from Tamerlane on his father's side and Genghis Khan on his mother's. So both the Turks and the Mongols had a great deal in common as nomad warriors who lorded it over semi-nomadic and agricultural peoples. So the remote position of Mongolia prevented Islam from making inroads there. So while the Muslim population of China remained largely connected with the international trade, Sino-Turkish families usually tended to be Buddhists, a legacy of the Tuba Wei emperor's patronage of this religion before the reunification of the Chinese Empire during the Su dynasty. So, its first emperor, the redoubtable Wendy, was so in the awe of his strong-willed Turkish wife that he is remembered as the most handpicked of all Chinese rulers. So when the empress noticed how attracted Wendy was to the charms of a young girl, she secretly had her killed. So finding out what was happened, the emperor rode off alone into a remote mountain valley and had to be brought back by his closest courtiers. So, who admonished him for putting his own life at risk. So, I may be honored as the son of the heaven, Wendy replied, but I haven't any freedom at all. So, the determined empress was actually part Xiongnu and part Wigner. So, his Sinicized family having lived a long time in the north. So, known as the Wigners, the name of the chief tribe bordering the Great Wall, these Turks established about 850 of Kochu, so a city near Turfan, and it is an empire that lasted until almost 1250. So according to the Chinese sources, the Wigners adopted Manichaeism under their third ruler, which is Mo Yu. So in 762, he had encountered his Iranian fate in Luoyang, while his horsemen were there assisting the Tang dynasty against An Lushan rebellion. So he became a converted and shortly after imposed the new beliefs on the Wigners. A Chinese envoy to Kochu noted in 982 how in this country it neither rains nor snows, and the heat is extreme. So every year, when summer is at its hottest, the inhabitants move underground. There is a river which flows from a mountain, defiled in such a way that its waters pass around the capital, irrigates its fields and gardens, and move its mills. So the mobility eat horses' flesh, while the rest of the population eat mutton, ducks, and geese. So there are some 50 Buddhist monasteries and the Manichaean temple. So no one is destitute because those who cannot provide for themselves are cared for by public welfare. So many people reach an advanced age, so Kochu is now an archaeological site. But under the Turks, the oasis city functioned as staging post on the Silk Road. Its half millennium of existence being not untypical of medieval Central Asia cities. So it is now dependent upon international and trade and was wary on the nomadic neighbor. Next is the Qidans. Who are the Qidans? So the Qidans successors of the Turks much of Central Asia during the 12th century, one of the least understood periods of its history. And the Kera-Kidal empires seems to have been a military domination of an area stretching from the Aral Sea to the Altai mountain range, so with its southern border adjoining Tibet. So the subject population was mostly Muslim. So the Qidans who have moved westward to dominate Central Asia briefly were propelled by the collapse of the Liao state in northeastern China. So those Qidans who stayed behind in 1114 and accepted in Jin rule and included the ancestors of Yelu Chukai, a future advisor of the Mongol Khans. So, the semi-nomadic Qidans had occupied an area of land on both sides of the Great Wall from 970s onwards. So, the Jin would never have overcome the Qidans were it not for an alliance they made with the Song dynasty. So, Chinese cooperation with the Jin was incredibly short-sighted, as the defeat of Liao removed a buffer state from the Song frontier and exposed the capital of Kaifeng to a direct Jin attack, which occurred in 1127. So afterwards, the Song imperial house was obliged to settle south of the Yangtze River and Hangzhou. So after the Jin conquest of Liao, uh, fugitive Qidans who traveled westwards and established the Karakidai Empire did not embrace Islam, so they tolerated the various religions of their subjects: Muslim, Jewish, Nestorian, Christians, Manichaean, and Buddhist, but remained wedded to tribal beliefs that involve animal sacrifices. So, before a campaign, it was customary to dedicate a gray ox and a white horse to the celestial realm. So, the earth and their ancestors, and possibly the reason for Islam failing to the converted the Qidans, as it did other peoples of nomad origin in the middle part of the Central Asia, were the relatively short period of Karakidai rule as well as the religious complexity of their empire. So, but the Khitan resistance may we have been reinforced by the Chinese attitudes. Since the Liao kingdom was thoroughly Sinized before its disappearance, a gilded Khitan crown with a Taoist divinity at the top of the Qidans on 2484. So as you can see from the picture, this is the gilded Khitan crown with a Taoist divinity at the top. Next is Yellow Dashi. Who is Yellow Dashi? Best known is Yellow Dashi. She is the founder of the Karakidai Empire that is Chinese called Western Liao. So taking advantage of this unity among the Turkish people living in Central Asia, he added to his side individuals and groups who were only too ready to throw their lot with the new and promising leader. So adding these experiences, warriors to a core of loyal supporters and making full use of plentiful supply of horses, Yellow Dashi was able to intimidate those who dared to oppose him. So his tendency to retain local rulers in their position also facilitated the smooth transition to a new empire. So Yellow Dashi was succeeded by his wife Xiao Tabuyan. So Xiao Tabuyan reigned as empress for 3 years. So in all likelihood, she acted as a regent for Yellow Dashi's young sons after his death. So his passing was certainly felt in Central Asia. So in 1144, the August Turks, some of whom had been driven northwards, returned in strength and sacked several oasis cities. So other Augusts had already trekked westwards and under Alp Arslan set up the Seljuk Empire in Persia and Iraq. From the picture, a collection of baubles, Turkish grave markers dating from the 6th century in Kyrgyzstan. So Yellow Dash's own reputation for success on the battlefield seems to have given his subject peoples reason to pause before asserting their independence. So apart from the August, there were plenty of restive Turks only waiting for an opportunity to resume the usual pattern of internecine conflict. So, but for nearly half a century, their disputes stayed minor ones. So trouble came during the reign of Zilugu, Yellow Dash's grandson, who was enthroned as the last Karakidar ruler in 1178. So a gradual decline was apparent before Genghis Khan's general Jebi defeated a Karakidai army of almost 30,000 strong in 1216 years. So, 2 years later, the Mongols completed the subjugation of all the land that had once formed the Karakidai Empire. So, its last ruler was Gokulug, a Turkish nobleman who had deposed Yellow Zilugu in 1211 years. So, Gekulug was a persistent enemy of Genghis Khan, gathering Mongol rivals around him and threatening Genghis' hegemony over the Mongol tribes. So the usurper escaped from the Mongols, whom Jevi sent to capture him at Kashgar, so only to be killed by them in 1218. So the Kashgar, the Mongol general proclaimed that every person could adhere to their own religion, thereby gaining the inhabitants' support. So other Central Asian cities were not persuaded by the proclamation, although they surrendered once Gokulug's severed head was conveyed from the city to city. So kung makita niyo sa picture, yung first picture is the Karakidai gold cap. So hindi niyo lang makikita na gold siya because of the color. And the next picture is the reclining Buddha from Inner Mongolia. Before the arrival of Islam, Buddhism was the religion of Central Asia. And that's all. Thank you for listening.